Welcome back to this series. And here's the thing. So 2018 is 2 years ago. So if I'm going to look back on a series from 2 years ago, there are ones people are going to expect. Why aren't you going to talk about Washington and Pittsburgh? Because I don't think Washington got over the hump against Pittsburgh. I think they got over the hump in the series before the one against Pittsburgh. I think it was Columbus. And I think Columbus showed in this series they were ready to break through in the playoffs and actually make some noise. And yet at the end of this series, we're left with Columbus being out, Washington moving on against Pittsburgh, and everybody going, well, we knew that was going to happen, so Pittsburgh's going to beat them. But you got to play the game. Now, 2018, it's easy to forget. The Capitals were 49, 26, and 7. Goals for, 259, which was 9th in the league. Goals against, 239, which was 15th. Braden Holtby had lost his starting job. The Capitals looked disinterested at points during the season. And nobody was picking them to win the Stanley Cup that year. The year before, everybody was picking them, yours truly included. Now, Columbus, 45, 30, and 7. Their numbers not that dissimilar to the Washington Capitals. Goals for, 242, which was 16th. Goals against, 230th, which was 10th. Their defensive numbers better than Washington. Their overall goal differential, well, the Capitals were ahead there, but not by a lot. So it was 20 goal differential for the Capitals. 12 for Columbus. So minor difference there over an 82-game schedule, right? Now, game one, I remember doing these reviews, and it's kind of weird to do videos talking about series that I covered all the games, and I feel like saying the reviews are on the channel. But game one, it starts early for Washington. So back-to-back power play goals during a major penalty on Josh Anderson. First, it's Kuznetsov from Backstrom and Carlson at 17:52, and then because they're not very creative, Kuznetsov scores again from Backstrom and Carlson again at 18:21. So it's the exact same scoring both times. Both power play goals during that 5-minute major. Second period, well, Columbus shows a little bit of fight back there. Wenberg scores from Jenner and Vanek at 4:48. That makes it 2-1 after 2. Third period, Vanek scores from Dubois and Panarin at 1:31. He was famously acquired for bodies from the Vancouver Canucks at the deadline. Smith-Pelly then scores to restore the lead for the Capitals from Vrana and Carlson at 5 minutes and 12 seconds, but Columbus ties it up again. It's a power play goal at Seth Jones from Panarin and Atkinson at 15:34, and in overtime at 6 minutes and 2 seconds, Artemi Panarin, he scores a goal from Cole and Dubois at 6:02. Panarin with 3 points in the game, and Columbus wins 4-3 in overtime. Bobrovsky, 27 saves on 30 shots. Grubauer, 23 saves on 27 shots. And he doesn't look nearly as good in this game as he did during the regular season. Going into the playoffs, Grubauer had seized the starting job in Washington. And in this round, it just doesn't last. So game two, and again with Grubauer starting the game. Washington starts off pretty well again. First, it's Beagle from Orpik and Yerbick at 2:12. And then it's a power play goal for Ovechkin from Carlson and Oshie at 13:26. So much like game one, they have a 2-0 lead. Atkinson scores from Foligno at 18:25 to make it 2-1 after one. But again, the Capitals, they're at home. They're against a team not known for a lot of playoff success, or any in this instance. So second period, Ovechkin scores on the power play to make it 3-1 from Backstrom and Carlson at 4:09. So it looks like things are going to go pretty well for Washington, and they should tie the series. But first, it's Anderson from Werenski and Jones at 8:49. Then it's a power play goal for Atkinson from Panarin and Jones at 11:13. And then Werenski scores on the power play from Bjorkstrand and Panarin at 18:52. Third period, suddenly down a goal and needing one, the Washington Capitals get the tie. Power play goal for Oshie from Backstrom and Carlson at 16:25. We go into overtime. What happens in overtime? Matt Calvert happens in overtime. He scores from Werenski and Anderson at 12:22. It's almost like deja vu. I feel like I've talked about this game before. Series in general. Bobrovsky, 54 saves on 58 shots. And he played well, considering 58 shots in 72 minutes of work. Grubauer saved 18 out of 22. Holtby goes in, saves 7 out of 8. But because he allowed the game-winning goal, he takes the loss. So we go to game 3. And at that point, Barry Trotz is like, okay, enough of Grubauer. We're going with Holtby. And I remember thinking, yeah, but. And again, there's previews and reviews on the channel from that series, so I'm not talking out of turn there. First period, no scoring. Second period, the Capitals score. Wilson from Niskanen and Ovechkin at 5:52, but they had scored the first goal in both games 1 and 2, so that didn't mean anything. And then Dubois scores from Panarin and Jones at 11:18 to prove it didn't mean anything. So, power play goal is scored by Karlsson from Backstrom and Ovechkin at 14:43, and now the Capitals enter the third period with a lead, which they entered the third period with in Game 1 as well. So in the third period, what happens? Columbus ties it. It's Panarin from Atkinson at 4 minutes and 12 seconds. We go to overtime. This is the most important overtime in the history of the Columbus Blue Jackets to this date. Columbus had never won a round. They win this one in overtime. They'd go up 3-0. And on the other side, if Washington loses this and they go down 3-0, well, you can just start piling dirt on Ovechkin's hopes for being seen as being a legend in the league. Right or wrong, there was a lot of talk about Ovechkin and his ability to lead the team, and not from me at that point. I stopped having that conversation years before we got to this. But it was still there. First overtime, there's no scoring. Second overtime. And the tension was huge because remember, Columbus is a goal away from sending Washington down 3-0, and they weren't coming back from 3-0 down. So it felt like this game was really, really important. And then Eller scores from Connolly and Smith-Pelly at 9 minutes. Very unlikely to see the three of them combine on a goal, but it happens. Holtby saves 33 out of 35, looks great. Bobrovsky saves 42 out of 45, so the Capitals outplayed him, and they get the victory on the road in Game 3. This is now a series. Game 4. This is where things start to kind of, turn against Columbus. And this is a familiar enough story if you're a Columbus Blue Jackets fan. And I think this is the series that caused Kekalainen to go kind of all in at last year's deadline because he doesn't want to see this happen again. So, Game 4 in Columbus, the Capitals get the goal in the first period from Wilson. Kuznetsov had the only assist at 6:16. So that's the fourth game in a row that Washington gets the first goal. Second period, overtime, or power play goal, I should say, for Oshie. Kuznetsov and Ovechkin with the assists at 9 minutes and 19 seconds. It's 2-0 Washington after 2. Third period, Ovechkin adds one from Kuznetsov and Wilson at 2:49. And then it's Boone Jenner from Anderson at 6:22. That makes it 3-1. They pull the goalie, but that just allows Kuznetsov to add the empty netter at 17:41. And the Capitals win 4-1, and they have home ice advantage back. Holtby saves 23 out of 24. Bobrovsky saves 29 out of 32. And here we go. So now we're back in Washington. Columbus does something they hadn't done in the series up until this point. They score first. And it's a shorthanded goal by Matt Calvert from Seth Jones at 10 minutes and 8 seconds. But less than 3 minutes later, Backstrom ties it from Stevenson and Kempney at 13:22. So second period, tie game until Kuznetsov scores from Orlov at 3:21. Calvert would tie it up at 4:45. So Matt Calvert showing a lot of the fight that made him popular in Columbus, made him one of my favorite players there. Power play goal by Oshie is then scored from Karlsson and Backstrom at 16:42. That makes it 3-2 in favor of the Capitals. But third period, for the third time in the series, they tie it. For the third time in the series, Columbus ties it in the third period. Bjorkstrand from Cole and Wenberg at 2:30. So we go into overtime. They had won Game 1 in overtime. Game 2 in overtime in Washington. Here's Game 5 in overtime. If you're a Capitals fan, heartbreak and overtime go together. Often with Pittsburgh involved, but very often overtime and heartbreak go together if you're a Capitals fan. So likely not feeling great entering overtime in Game 5, remembering Games 1 and 2 at home. In overtime at 11:53, it's Nick Backstrom scoring from Orlov and Stevenson, and the Capitals win one at home in overtime. Bobrovsky saves 25 out of 29 in the loss. Holtby stands on his head again, 39 saves on 42 shots. Holtby plays very, very well. Now Columbus needs to win at home. And the narrative changes. Columbus hasn't won at home in the entire series. So now Washington finally got their home win, and now it's up to Columbus to answer with the same. And they don't. First period, it's Orlov from Niskanen and Stevenson at 12:12. 1-0 Capitals after one. Second period, Foligno scores from Murray and Cole at 8:40, and then it all falls apart. First, it's Ovechkin from Warpik and Juice at 12 minutes and 50 seconds, and then Ovechkin on the power play from Karlsson and Kuznetsov at 18:23. That makes it 3-1. Third period, Dubois scores from Calvert at 2:25. That makes it 3-2, but yeah, once this gets rolling, Smith-Pelly scores at 3:56, and then it's a shorthanded goal by Stevenson from Beagle at 5 minutes and 30 seconds. Foligno, he gets another goal for Columbus to at least bring them within 2. From Jenner and Bjorkstrand at 8:22, but when they pull the goalie, all that does is allow Washington to get their 6th and final goal. Eller from Beagle at 19:46, and the Capitals survive a scare. Right here, Game 3, for me, if you're going to talk about when a team gets over that hump to win a Stanley Cup, to me it is right here. It is Game 3 in this series where the Capitals start to believe in themselves. And they don't lose again after that, and then they went on and they knocked out the Pittsburgh Penguins on their way to a Stanley Cup. Their first Stanley Cup. And to me, it's right here, it's Game 3, it's the Lars Eller goal that really tells the story. So while, yes, I could have talked about the Pittsburgh-Washington series, and likely more people would have viewed the video and would have got more attention, this, for me, was the bigger key series for the Capitals on their road to the Cup. Panarin had 2 goals and 5 assists. He had a great series. Jones, a goal and 4 helpers. Calvert, 3 goals and an assist. Atkinson and Dubois both had 2 goals and 2 assists. Bobrovsky was 2 and 4 with a .900 save percentage. On the Capitals side, Karlsson had a goal and 8 assists. Ovechkin had 5 goals and 3 assists. Kuznetsov, 4 goals, 4 assists. Backstrom, 2 goals and 6 assists. Their star players came to play. Oshie had 3 goals and a helper. Holtby went 4 and 1 with a .932 save percentage. And Grubauer, winding down his time in Washington, goes 0 and 1 with an .837 save percentage. After stealing the job from Holtby going into the playoffs, Holtby steals it back in Game 2 of that first round. And the rest is history, as he goes on to be one of the best players for the Capitals throughout the rest of the playoffs. Didn't start that way, though. And this was very, very close to being a huge upset for Columbus, and who knows what might have happened. Columbus would finally win a round the following season, of course, as we all know. But this round, I think, set up both teams. It sets up Washington for the Stanley Cup, and I think it set up Columbus and showed them, hey, we can hang with these better teams in our division, with the better teams in our conference, and gave them the confidence to do what they did in 2019 against Tampa. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.